It's art, or something like it's art, or something like it.
It's time for more art! Introducing Ramiro Flores as one of New York City's finest jazz musicians. Then we will experience the experimental music and video of Brooklyn-based artist Adam Kendall and hear the hard-hitting words of poet Ryan Duffy. But first, let's check out Taliah Lampert and her two-wheeled portraits. Let's see some art.
My name's Talia. These are my paintings. I paint pictures of bicycles. I think there's like a life in looking at something that's really important to somebody, and that I can see a lot there beyond the actual object. I guess I'm torn about what makes somebody a professional artist. I think in a lot of ways professional means that, you know, you're serious and you're making a living at it, or maybe claiming that you're an artist on your taxes maybe makes you a professional. I work really hard, and I think I'm doing some of the best paintings that I've ever been doing right now. And I'm not selling enough to make a living. And I'm kind of on the cusp. It's really hard to not get down about that. I don't know that I'll always paint bicycles, but right now I don't really feel any need to stop. Like, these paintings, I feel like they really develop, like they kind of come into focus as I work on them, almost like a photograph in solution, which is kind of cool. On my website, I have a page where I take pictures of them as I'm working, and it really kind of comes together like that. Like, I can really see how they develop. Just fun, because sometimes I work on them all day and they don't really seem to change a whole lot. So it's nice to see it, like pictures of them in progress. And also, I think that so much of painting is the process and the progress, that I like having a record. And sometimes I feel like that record has become like an artwork too. I think that like painting from observation is really like being a recorder almost, that with every brush stroke and action, it's kind of almost like cutting a vinyl record a little bit. And a lot of the ideas that I'm playing with when I'm painting get recorded into the painting. And a lot of times I think about the forms in the bike, how it came, you know, how I happened to be painting that bike. You know, a lot of times it's like a friend's bike that they lent me. A bike is such a proud symbol, such a symbol of like people being able to do something independently. And for me, like, I get really excited about the idea of transporting myself with my own power, which kind of means more than just the bicycle and more than just transportation, but like life in a way. I feel like my paintings are really political. I feel like when I'm painting bicycles, it's kind of like a framework to put my thoughts and ideas about life and my ideas about painting. I get really interested in painting, and the paintings that I enjoy, be it, you know, Warhol or be it like abstract expressionists, I feel a really strong pull as an American to like abstract expressionist paintings, and then I also really like Duchamp and the idea of randomness, kind of like in these things that I'm doing up here. Like, I've been painting with acrylic and then kind of cutting in with shellac, and the shellac, it's tinted shellac that's white, and I can kind of cover up the like the things that I want to change, like I'm editing, and then it drips and it's in areas where it's almost unplanned, and it gets kind of like, it's that in itself becomes like a painting, like almost like a Duchamp kind of chance painting. There's a lot of different things that go on in my work where I feel like it's not illustration, it's painting, very full kind of deep painting. I don't really paint from photographs. I used to paint, I have painted from photographs for like mural work and stuff, and at a certain point years ago I made a pretty sharp distinction that I wouldn't paint from photographs in my own studio work, and I wanted to make work that was about observation and observing from life or from bicycle. Thanks for watching. My name's Talia. If you want to see more of my work, my website is bicyclepaintings.com. And you can email me at talia@bicyclepaintings.com. Thanks.
Dietary supplement, dialysis distributed through the membrane of your government. They called me a revolutionary. How is one who revolves around the truth so scary? Revolutions revolve around fallacies. My mind mindfully circumvents actuality, so I gladly revolt to the current state of affairs, where the division of estates is far from fair. Intellectual edifices built with no foundation. Society where marriage is a reality show, no longer found dating children, found mating with priests. Sins way beyond statutory raping, intellect edified by MTV, BET, and VH1. Falsifying the real world on College Hill, gone behind the music. What about behind the public school system? Primary source for education seems to be the source, and the public has maimed more than saved. And the problem is blamed on the parents who blame the teachers, who blames the principal, who blames the government, who blames the board, who blames funding. This gets redundant and really doesn't matter. What's up, New York? My name is Diet. I'm a performing poet, also known as a spoken word artist. If anybody's seen Def Poetry Jam, that's the type of stuff I do. I'm about raising consciousness. I'm about letting my people, and that's everybody, everybody's my people, know what's going on in the world. Hip hop is my inspiration. I love hip hop. I loved it, you know, since the first time I heard it, and I love it just as much today. And when I say hip hop, I don't mean that bling bling booty shaking stuff that is out right now, you know, that's commercialized right now. When I say hip hop, I mean the essence of what the movement began as. You know, having people from the streets, people who had no voice, no way to make it, be able to make ends meet by telling the world their story. I've got this potential to actuate. You know, I've been hounded by the potential alien. Hounded by the potential alien. You can do something. You can do. That's no way of saying you ain't done nothing yet, brother. And when I've finally actuated my potential, when I finally touched people in the way that I want to do it, then I'll be a professional. It's not about making money, because I make money doing what I'm doing. Not much at all, but I do make some. So, I mean, it's not like you're a professional when you're paid. You're a professional, in my eyes, I'm a professional when I've actuated my potential. He digs deep into uterine walls, like walking through the project halls, fiending for them lingering smells, seeming like he's in jail. His bars are the gift of free will, willing to freely give up himself because freedom has given him nothing but used condoms, so he digs deeper. Friday night flings got him searching for this thing called love. $40 cover charge is worth it if he finds the one to take his heart, so he tears his sobriety down, $20 a shot. The bass dictating the pace of the game, hide and go seek. He thinks it's hidden in uterine walls, so he digs deep, deep, deep. And this is how he keeps his sanity, just doing what he thinks is manly, but his life is steeped in profanity. Being an artist where I'm writing, you can't write something without giving of yourself. You know, like I said earlier, in terms of where I get my knowledge from, I get my knowledge through life experiences. So if I write a piece, I might not have personally experienced it, but I know someone who did, who's close to me, or I've seen someone who did, and just because they're struggling, they're close to me. I don't need to know you to feel for you. This one right here is another one that kind of pushed me over the edge to be an artist. I've been writing since I was 11 years old, but never really considered myself an artist until recently. And, you know, these are one of the things that I wrote about. It's a short piece, but something that means a lot to me and a lot of kids in the areas that I'm from and the areas that, you know, I hang out in can identify with. I put my head on my pillow with my ear out the window so my face could feel the effects of this brisk early March, air crisp with what's left of winter, waiting to slip into the sweet peacefulness of my daily loss of consciousness where I don't need a spliff to deal with life. That ends the day's problems and obnoxiousness as my mind cools and empties as I'm trying to sleep. My metaphorically euphoric but actually absent moments of ignorance are interrupted by the abrupt blasting of a clip slipped into my memory bank back when I was 13, still plagued by an age of uncertainty. Thanks, New York, for watching. If you want to find out more about me, diet, you can email me at dietary supplement, DIATSUPPLEMENT @yahoo.com, and I will get back to you. You know, just let me know whether there's any performances, and I don't mind going to them. And just thanks for listening. Hope it was good for you guys, because this was definitely very good for me. Good night.
My name's Adam Kendall. I suppose I'm what you would call a multimedia artist. I'm a video artist and I'm a musician. I rarely do the two of them together except in my studio. As a performer, it's almost exclusively just video or just music. There are three pieces that I consider kind of like really finished, in the sense that they go start to finish doing what I want, they develop some ideas, and they happen to involve music. The first piece is called Cerro Tower and the Jericho Drum. And on just a purely technical level, it's just a study of a water tower. And I think it's indicative of what's going on with my style in the use of color, or actually like the bare use of color, like the fact that I tend to highly desaturate what I work on. The way images are layered on top of each other. There's a lot of motion, and I don't just literally mean motion of the camera, but I mean motion in the video processing, and it also gets a bit into urban landscapes. I mean, it's actually, in this case, suburban landscapes. You know, like, to me, like, music, ever since I was very little, I really was very conscious of music being kind of a way to handle the inside world, like handle what's going on inside my head. And I think video is very much a response to the outside world. It's about me trying to like get a grip on it and exert some control over what I'm seeing. I have a piece called New Birds and Move. That's something I did with my Hellbender partner, Al Griffin. I wrote the music, which is called Move, and that was music that was written completely as its own thing. He and I did a live show a while ago where we just did the video. We were doing the video to some other live musician, and I really liked the video we did. We didn't even record the live musician, we just recorded our own video. And I wanted to do something with it, and I just realized that naturally, if I put it with this piece of music, it just worked. So it's a completely live, you know, the Cerro Tower and Jericho Drum is a complete studio creation, whereas the Birds video is the music is complete studio, but the video is completely live improvisation with just minor editing after the fact, you know, basically to trim it so it would fit with the music. Very minor editing. There's a world of video and music, or video and any other media, but for now let's just talk about video and music, that the general public, I think, is finally becoming aware of, at least in New York City. I think people who go out to shows are finally understanding that video could very well be part of it, and why video is part of it, and that it's not just eye candy, and that it's as integral a part of the show as the musicians. But I still feel like it's important that events that kind of hit people over the head with the fact need to exist. Video is an integral art form. It is its own thing. It might be with music, but it's just as important as music. It might be with dance, but it's just as important as dance. There's a piece called Geese, which is, to me, a full-blown studio composition. And it was originally written as a silent video. And I wrote it for a festival called the T- Festival. And the mission of the T- Festival is video artists dealing with the concept of time. Now, of course, you know, video is a time-based medium, but they mean, like, really, what do video artists do to time? And this is just my response to it. My website is hellbender.org, and it's, just to spell it out, it's HELLBENDER.org. And you could find out a lot about me there. You could find out about my current shows. You can find full-length and sample clips of my video and of my music. So come on over to the website if you have the time.
Hello, my name is Ramiro Flores. I'm a sax player here in New York. I'm also a composer. I have my own band with which I play Argentinian jazz music, which would be a mixture of Argentinian music and jazz. I was 11, and I wanted to play a big horn instrument, like a big metal instrument. And I chose the saxophone because I knew that the saxophone was a big metal instrument. I didn't know exactly which one it was. I just said saxophone. I thought that saxophone was a trombone. And so my mother got a sax teacher for me, and I went to a sax lesson, and I was like, oh, so it's not that one, it's this one. And that's how I started. What I want to get to do now, which is something that I think most people who've played jazz don't do, is going into a much more simpler and grounded and like more of a. I want to get more of a core feeling when I play my music, because I mean that's basically what I want to get from the folklore and tango of my country, that blood feeling that I feel when I hear it. I believe that in art and in life, which would be the same, you do things from a certain perspective, from a certain persona, I would say, that does things, and that's what I seek to do, to like play music and do everything I do from there. I've been told many rules in school about writing music, but I think gradually they're going away. It's a hard process though, to not think about that stuff for me. I used to be very analytical about composing and playing and improvising and all that. And I think that I've gotten away from it. I mean, I think music is one of the most important art forms, and and I feel like it gets further in many more ways than other art forms do, like in an emotional aspect, much more. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to know more about me, you can visit my website at www.ramiroflores.com. Thank you very much.
Thanks to all the artists and all the people that made this show possible. Special thanks to New York City for providing a breeding ground of creativity.
It's art, or something like it's art, or something like it.
This is Art or Something Like It, presenting a gallery of amazing artists each and every week, and more integrity than he can shake a stick at. For more information about the show, or any of the artists on the show, please visit artorsomethinglikeit.com. Next time you experience something new and you don't know what to make of it, you should ask yourself, is it art or something like it? Thank you. Good night.
I'm art or something like it. I'm art or something like it. I'm art I'm martyr something like it. I'm martyr, I'm martyr, I'm martyr something like it. I'm martyr something like it. And I'm martyr something like it.